Welcome to Reporter's Notebook, where we talk to the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the stories breaking on their beats. I'm Jim Antle. I'm joined today by White House reporter Haisten Willis. Haisten, the White House continues to grapple with this whole situation of President Biden's classified documents. And some are saying that the way they've chosen to respond to this controversy has not been the most effective way.
Yeah,
what are you hearing?
It's been really interesting to see how this kind of unfolds. This story has this sort of like almost wave-like action to it, that it comes into the news cycle and then it kind of fades back out and then comes back in. There's been this steady drip of revelations, usually coming through CBS. They seem to have a source on the inside that's breaking news about different documents being discovered, searches being done at Biden's Wilmington home, Biden's Redwood Beach home, his think tank. Just kind of keeps coming and going. And the White House's strategy has been basically it seems to be just to kind of wait until news breaks and then react to that. They haven't really been forthcoming at all about what's happening. They're saying they're being transparent, but that doesn't really seem to gel with what they're doing. For example, the Penn Biden Center was searched in the middle of November. No one learned about that until just a few days ago when, again, CBS broke the news. So it's really interesting. I talked to two different ethics and political strategy experts yesterday. One was a Democrat, one was a Republican, and both said almost the exact same thing. They said the White House is being far too laissez-faire, kind of laid back about this. They should have, when that first document was discovered on November 2nd, both of them said the same thing. They should have searched both houses, searched the think tank, basically searched everything right away, and then they could have had a release about that in November or December and gotten the whole story out and over with by the end of the year. Obviously, they have not done that, and we're still continuing to get revelations about this, maybe getting more in the coming weeks.
I mean, because the big thing is that, yes, they do come out and make statements, and yes, they do provide some level of detail, even if though they're not really doing it through the traditional White House briefing. A lot of these disclosures seem to be driven by news reports coming out first.
Yeah, very much so. Again, it's usually, the way this kind of pops back up in the news is that a news outlet, usually CBS, will report a new revelation, and then they will not really answer any questions about it, which I guess is why it's will die out after a few days. People ask these same questions over and over again. Well, what documents are these?
Right.
Are these the last documents? What are you doing with them? What are you taking steps to address this going forward to make sure no new classified documents end up in the wrong place? They won't answer really any questions. They just say, we'll refer you to White House counsel or Department of Justice. And then if people do go to the White House counsel or Department of Justice, they don't answer the question either.
Right.
So it's been really strange the way it's just kind of going back and forth.
Most transparent administration in history. So COVID has also been a sort of overarching issue for the Biden administration. They're ending the COVID emergency. There's been a lot of criticism of how the administration has handled its COVID response, but also COVID is a big reason President Biden got elected in the first place, and it's been an area where he has had higher than normal job approval ratings. What is this end of the emergency response this far down from the peak period of the pandemic? What does that really mean?
Yeah, that's going to be really interesting. They've announced that they are finally going to allow the national emergency, the public health emergency over COVID, to end in May, which will be over 3 years beyond when it started. It's been a really long time. And yeah, like you said, that was a big issue for Biden in the 2020 election. It definitely helped him get elected. There's polling that shows that. And that was one of the last issues where he remained above water, above 50% with his approval ratings, was handling of COVID. But I think a lot of that kind of faded last year across 2022 as the disease itself just sort of rescinded from the public mind. Most of the mandates went away and things like that. And so, but they're finally just now saying, okay, we're finally going to let this emergency end. Biden said back in September, he told CBS's Scott Pelley that the pandemic is over. He said that twice.
Right.
But they extended the emergency twice, even since that interview came out, Biden himself saying it was over. And they were under a lot of pressure from Congress to end the emergency as well. The Senate voted on a pretty bipartisan basis last year to end the emergency. Biden said he was going to veto that if it got to his desk. And then the House was going to vote this week on that as well. So I think it was kind of becoming a little bit of a circus. Like, how long is this emergency going to last? And they finally have made that announcement. Okay, we're going to let this go in May.
So COVID is sort of related to the broader issue of executive power, because a lot of COVID emergency status allowed the executive branch to exercise certain powers. And Biden is under scrutiny from House Republicans about his use of executive authority. Are we seeing the potential for some kind of a standoff on that?
Yes, I definitely think we are on a number of different issues. Right, that was one of the big talking points about why this emergency was being extended. When most people would not say we were in an emergency situation. Right, as Biden himself said, most people aren't wearing masks anymore, and people are back in the office and that kind of thing. So, but right, the emergency. It's not just you don't just declare an emergency. There's a lot of legal stuff that comes with this. The executive branch gets expanded powers when there is an emergency that's declared. Well, the biggest one is probably the student loans issue, which is ongoing. The Supreme Court's going to hear that in February, and there's two different aspects to it. There's student loans pause and student loans cancellation. The pause has been in effect also for 3 years since the start of the pandemic. It's going to end. It's scheduled to end at the end of June. So that student loans pause, which is based on the pandemic, is actually going to last now longer than the national emergency on which it's supposed to rest. Cancellation also rests on the existence of the pandemic as an emergency, which is going to complicate things for the White House. They were asked a few questions about that just a few days ago. If this emergency does not exist, how can you use the HEROES Act to justify canceling student loans? And they said that they still couldn't.
No, it's an interesting issue. Maybe cancel culture applies to student loans too.
The administration hopes so, yes.
Thank you, Haisten.
All right.
You can read Haisten and the rest of our political team's coverage at washingtonexaminer.com.